On October 10th, 2008, in Edmonton, Canada, a 38-year-old man named Johnny Altinger told his friends he was heading out for a date with a woman he met online. He forwarded them the directions to her place, a common safety precaution. But after that night, Johnny was never seen or heard from again. Instead, his friends and family received bizarre emails claiming he had run off to Costa Rica with his new love. The only clues left behind were his passport sitting in his apartment and a missing red Mazda. The police investigation would soon uncover a rented garage and a chilling connection to the fictional TV serial killer, Dexter Morgan. How did a date from a popular website lead to a man's disappearance and unravel a story stranger and more terrifying than fiction? The man at the center of this twisted tale was an aspiring filmmaker named Mark Twitchell, a man who meticulously planned his descent from fantasy into a horrifying reality. Mark Twitchell was born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, in 1979. Growing up, he seemed like a typical kid with big dreams. He was charismatic and ambitious, with a passion for filmmaking, particularly the Star Wars franchise. He married, had a daughter, and presented the image of a successful family man with a burgeoning career. But behind the scenes, Twitchell's life was a web of lies. He was unemployed, telling his wife he was going to work each day while he was actually spending his time in a rented garage, a space he told people was a film set. He was funding his movie projects by conning his friends into investing in his supposed Hollywood connections. His marriage was crumbling. He and his wife were living in separate parts of their house, and he was carrying on an affair with an old girlfriend. Twitchell was living a double life, but the secrets he was keeping were far darker than just infidelity and financial deception. He was cultivating a fantasy world, one that was about to spill violently into the real world. This fantasy was heavily influenced by a character he deeply admired, Dexter Morgan, the vigilante serial killer from the hit TV show. The garage wasn't just a film set. It was becoming something much more sinister. Before Johnny Altinger vanished, another man had a terrifying encounter in that same garage. Gilles Tetreault, a 33-year-old man, also thought he was meeting a woman named Sheena from the Plenty of Fish dating website. The directions led him to a residential garage, where he was told the door would be left open for him. The moment he stepped inside, the friendly date turned into a nightmare. He was ambushed from behind by a man in a painted hockey mask. The attacker, Mark Twitchell, pointed what looked like a real gun at him and ordered him to the ground, with his world plunged into blackness by a strip of duct tape. In that instant, he understood. This was a fight for his life. In a surge of adrenaline, he ripped the tape from his eyes and confronted his attacker. He lunged for the gun and was relieved to feel that it was plastic. A desperate struggle ensued. Tetreault, weakened by what he later learned was a stun baton, fought back with everything he had. He managed to slip out of his jacket as Twitchell grabbed him, rolled under the garage door, and scrambled to his car. His legs felt weak and unresponsive, but he managed to start the engine and speed away, leaving his would-be killer in the dark garage. Shaken, embarrassed, and confused, Gilles Tetreault didn't go to the police. He tried to forget the bizarre and terrifying event, convincing himself it was just a robbery gone wrong. He had no idea how lucky he had been. Twitchell's first attempt had failed, but he was a quick learner. He wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. Just 1 week after Gilles Tetreault's narrow escape, Johnny Altinger answered a similar ad. On October 10th, 2008, the 38-year-old left for his date, having sent the directions to his friends. When he arrived at the garage, he was met with the same trap, but this time, Twitchell was prepared. Learning from his first attempt, he didn't rely solely on the stun baton. He struck Johnny over the head with a heavy lead pipe, incapacitating him immediately. What happened next was pulled directly from the pages of a horror script. Twitchell moved Johnny to a makeshift processing table he had set up in the garage, complete with plastic sheeting, just like his hero Dexter Morgan. There, he ended Johnny Altinger's life with a knife. Afterward, he began the grisly process of dismembering the body. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated act. Twitchell then accessed Johnny's apartment, sending out the now infamous emails to Johnny's friends and family, creating the illusion that he had simply decided to leave the country. He took Johnny's red Mazda, further solidifying his fabricated story. But Twitchell's meticulous planning was about to be unraveled by a single digital breadcrumb he left behind. The strange emails from Johnny immediately raised red flags for his friends. It was completely out of character for the responsible 38-year-old. When he didn't show up for work, his friends grew more concerned. They broke into his apartment and found his passport, dirty dishes in the sink, and everything else suggesting he had just stepped out for a short while. With this information, they went to the police, who launched a missing person investigation. The police's first priority was to find the missing red Mazda. They searched airport parking lots, thinking he might have actually gone to Costa Rica, but turned up nothing. The biggest break in the case came from the very directions Johnny had forwarded to his friends as a safety measure. The police were led directly to the garage rented by Mark Twitchell. When they first questioned him, Twitchell was calm and cooperative. He explained that the garage was a set for his new horror film, House of Cards, a story about a killer who lures a man to a garage via the internet. He even dismissed what looked like bloodstains as fake movie props. He seemed more interested in bragging about his film career than being a suspect in a disappearance. But then, he made a crucial mistake. In a later conversation with police, he casually mentioned that he had recently bought a red car from a stranger for just $40. This unbelievable story, coupled with the eerie similarities between his movie plot and the real-life disappearance, put him squarely in the investigators' crosshairs. The investigation into Mark Twitchell was intensifying. While he maintained his innocence, detectives were digging deeper into his life. Their search of his belongings uncovered his laptop, and on it, a deleted file that would blow the case wide open. The file was titled Skay Confessions, with Skay believed to be shorthand for serial killer. The document read like a diary, a first-person account of a man's journey into becoming a murderer. The document detailed the luring of two men to a garage. It described the first victim's escape, matching Gilles Techereau's experience almost word for word. Then, it recounted the successful murder and dismemberment of the second victim. The text was chillingly specific. I plunged the knife deep into his neck. It was unbelievable. The document also described the killer's attempts to dispose of the body. First, by trying to burn the remains, and then by attempting to dump them in a river, before finally settling on a sewer. The narrative was a confession, a screenplay, and a diary all rolled into one. For investigators, it was a direct look into the mind of their suspect. The lines between Mark Twitchell the filmmaker and Mark Twitchell the killer had completely dissolved. The document was his story, written in his own words. Now, they just had to prove it. In March of 2011, Mark Twitchell went on trial for the first-degree murder of Johnny Altinger. The prosecution's star witness was Gilles Techereau, the man who had survived. His testimony provided a living link to the events described in SK Confessions, proving it was not a work of fiction. When Twitchell took the stand in his own defense, he spun an incredible tale. He claimed the entire affair was a publicity stunt for his movie that had gone horribly wrong. He alleged that he intended to let both men go, hoping they would spread the word about their terrifying experience and generate buzz for his film. He claimed he killed Johnny Altinger in self-defense after Johnny became enraged at being tricked. The jury didn't buy it. They took just 5 hours to find him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. But the story wasn't over. For a year and a half, Johnny Altinger's remains were still missing. Then, while awaiting trial, Twitchell finally broke his silence. He provided police with a hand-drawn map, with an X marking the spot. It led them to a sewer grate just a block and a half from his parents' house, where they found Johnny's partial remains, bringing a small measure of closure to his devastated family. Even from behind bars, Mark Twitchell's obsession with his own story continued. He corresponded with author Steve Lillibuen, who wrote a book about the case. In his letters, Twitchell never wavered from his self-defense claim, yet he also seemed to embrace his dark persona, writing, "It is what it is, and I am what I am." In a final, twisted turn of events, the rights to Lillibuen's book were sold to a film company. The aspiring filmmaker, who created a real-life horror movie in his quest for fame, may finally get his story on the big screen. The case of the Dexter Killer serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most monstrous characters aren't on screen, but are sitting right next to us, dreaming of their own twisted close-up.